Okay, great. Good evening. Thank
Hi.
you
Good
so
evening.
much for joining us for this live. Hi, thank you for joining on a Friday evening for this live. We have an awesome discussion ahead of us with Amitava Kumar and Aditya Mani Jha on Amitava's latest work, The Green Book. Amitava Kumar is a writer, journalist, and a professor of English at Vassar College. His novel, Immigrant Montana, was on the best of the year list at The New Yorker, The New York Times, and President Obama's list of favorite books of 2018. The New Yorker magazine called his 2021 novel, A Time Outside This Time, a shimmering assault on the zeitgeist. This novel is My Beloved Life and was described by James Wood as beautiful, truthful fiction. Amitava's work has appeared in Granta, The New Yorker, The New York Times, Harper's, Brick, and several other publications. Aditya Mani Jha is a writer and journalist with 10 years of work experience. He was a commissioning editor at the Hindu Business Line between 2015 to 2017 and at Penguin Random House, India between 2017 and 2019. He was a books editor at the Sunday Guardian between 2012 and 2015. He has a screen column at The Hindu called Binge Watch, and his articles are regularly featured at Mint Lounge, India Today, Times of India, Open, and several other publications. It's so nice to have you both here. We are so looking forward to this conversation. I would now like to hand it over to Aditya.
All right.
Thank you so much. Hi, Amitava. I hope you can hear me clearly.
Yes, I can. Loud and clear, boss. How are you?
Great, great. So we shall set the ball rolling. So this discussion today is about the Green Book. Yeah, right. So firstly, I would want you to talk the audience through what started this whole process. In 2023, the Blue Book came out, right, and then last year you had the Yellow Book, and this one concludes the trilogy, if you will. So I just wanted you to backpedal a little bit and tell us about how these three books began life.
You know, in the introduction, Ankita didn't mention that you are an IIT graduate. You dashed your parents' hopes um, of being a real good engineer. But you will know this basic science that blue and green, when mixed together, when blue and yellow are mixed together, they bring green. They become green. So, in some ways, almost it was the logic of science. But more seriously, what happened was, uh, when I was doing those drawings during the pandemic and just trying to, for example, painting on the obituaries published in the New York Times of the COVID dead, and writing making journal entries. That became the Blue Book. It was almost an arbitrary kind of choice of the color, maybe because the Blue Book was the name of the report card we would get when I was in college, when I was in school in Patna. And I was washing away the trauma of the Blue Book by instead of the teachers doing it, I was taking authorship of that. So that came out in the Blue Book. And then the story I tell at the beginning of the Yellow Book is that I went to teach a colleague's class here at Vassar. It was on creativity. And what he had done was that he had given every student 2 notebooks. I'm seeing it was 2 notebooks joined together with a rubber band. One notebook was blue in color and the other one was yellow. In the blue one, you had to write your own thoughts. In the yellow one, you had to note down other people's thoughts, or the vice versa. I can't remember. So if you have a quote from Schopenhauer, you would put it in one. But if you wrote, "I got caught in the rain today," you would write in the other one. And there I had all the students hold up. I remember I asked the kids in class to hold up their notebooks and I took a picture because I announced to everyone that now I have, you can maybe see it here,
Yeah.
I said, I have now got the title of my second book. This was Yellow Book. And then, as you know, with every passing year, the realities of climate change are oppressing us, And so I had wanted to do something that in some ways addressed nature and I thought calling it Green Book would be a good idea. So that's the basic story.
Right. But the second part of the title is also an observer's notebook. So it's
Ah,
fitting that through the book, you write a lot about famous writers and their notebooks and your encounters with those notebooks. And
yes,
there's a section
yes.
about Penelope Fitzgerald in the book, and also fittingly about John Berger, because this is an illustrated book after all. And John Berger is someone that, if you're even remotely connected to visual culture at all, you're a film student or an art student, odds are you will have read a lot of John Berger. So it's if
Say,
you could tell the audience about what you discovered in John Berger's notebook and how that fed into this section of the book.
yeah. Actually, when I was writing the Yellow Book, towards the end of the time I was writing the Yellow Book, I was in London, because this my college has a study abroad program, and I had taken my students to London. So I went to the British Library there, free. Photography was not allowed in the manuscript section, but they would allow you to look at the diaries of writers. John Berger was one of the first writers I wrote down. I asked for Naipaul's also, but only Shiva Naipaul's notebooks were available, and a few others. In case of John Berger, first of all, I should say that because photography was not allowed, I just had my iPad and I started drawing those notebooks on it. And that was kind of an interesting exercise. I drew, for example, John Berger's notebooks. In his notebooks, there was, as in the case of the others, including quite remarkably Penelope Fitzgerald, there was almost the outlining of what their novels were going to be. And in case of Fitzgerald, for example, she would say, she would propose in small lines what the plot could be, and then the changes in the plot. And for me, it was just discovering in some ways a process through which writing gets done. In case of Berger, there were also drawings, and that interested me. I did not see the notebook for Bento's sketchbook, where this whole journey had started when Michael Ondaatje gave me or showed me in his house the notebooks, the book that became Bento's notebook, which is John Berger's book. And that made me think, okay, one can actually draw, one can sometimes use spit to just mix the color and give certain sense of density or volume to the drawing. And so that was nice. I'm even as I'm talking, I'm slightly distracted because I'm looking very quickly in my iPad so that I can show you how I had started making the drawings. I want to show you how I drew. Oh, yes, I found it. So this is how I drew Penelope Fitzgerald's notebook. This is this red notebook, which is called Memo Books, British made, it said, in which were all her notes. This was Virginia Woolf's diary, and that was remarkable too, because in the others,
Virginia Woolf famously has written a lot about the act of journaling.
अच्छा, ये मुझे नहीं पता. अच्छा. What I liked was just, what can I say? In the others, you saw how they were trying to put together a story. But in case of Virginia Woolf, the pure genius of those sentences. She's a young woman, she's traveling in Greece or Turkey. Those sentences, they just, they flow with such, how shall I say, such intensity and beauty. Everything alive. Whether she's
And I think you, as a writing teacher, must also find Woolf's work especially appealing because they provide such a profusion of teachable moments.
Sahi baat is exactly right. Exactly. Except I have to also confess that you're struck dumb by the genius. You realize how puny your imagination is, and how weak your sentences are. I mean, I'm very conscious of it when I read. It's like, fuck. Yeah.
You also write about teaching a course in nature writing, and that was one of the starting points for this particular book, the Green Book.
Yeah.
And another starting point, or another point where you felt that you had to expand this was when you were teaching at the Fishkill Correctional Facility. And that has also made its way into this book. So, if you could briefly talk about these two experiences or these two moments in time.
Yeah, just as in the British Library, in the manuscript section, photography was not allowed. I could not, of course, take a phone or a camera inside the prison where I was teaching. It was a volunteer course, I had called it Literature from Elsewhere. And I was trying to teach, I was trying to avoid teaching things which had prison, etc. in it. Though I remember at least one story did have a scene. It was a story from Chimamanda Adichie's, a short story called Cell 1. So I would teach. You could not take anything to record, but I did furtively try to draw some of the things I was seeing my students. A dog that my student brought, a dog that had been allowed in the prison because it is believed by the prison authorities that it calms everyone. And the dog was beautiful, um, a Labrador puppy. The experience of teaching in the prison, I have included it because they all had to wear green. And the teachers were not allowed to wear green, obviously, because so that the guards could see from a distance the person leaving the building was not wearing green. And so I included it because of the green, but I also wanted to just talk a little bit in a book about art, about prison, where there is the idea of greenness, the idea of being constrained in a gray room. How does that encounter with otherness expand our minds, bring up short our own experiences, and inform us about the world? It was lovely for me to very gently encourage the students to come to terms with or to find a language for explaining what had happened with their lives, where things had gone awry, and what their hopes were for the future. So that was one experience. The other experience was, I remember when I started teaching here 20 years ago in this college, I was very interested in a course I had designed called Literature of 9/11. Cool. What had happened in September 11? Literature that was coming out from Guantanamo, in the sense of what were there was a guard's diary, there was a prison diary, all those, and then of course then the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, the forever war, as Dexter Filkins called, I think, in one of his books. So I was teaching that kind of literature. But over the last few years, it has become very, very important to think, how can I design a course in literature that addresses climate change? Because that is really the catastrophe that surrounds us, So I taught a few books which I thought I had to read them myself. There's a book that has become very big in this country, Braiding Sweetgrass, by Robin Wall Kimmerer. But I was also trying to think of I'm looking at my shelf here, Ed Yong's Immense World, Ill Nature by Joy Williams.
I think
But I was
there's
also,
always been a strong strain of American writers in this tradition. Annie Dillard comes to mind
say,
immediately.
say, say. I taught a thing of hers too. I I just wanted to make it a bit more contemporary. So, like, there was a book that had come out a year or so ago saying, "The heat will kill you first." So we read that first. And then there was another one called Fire Weather, which is about how the forests are drying and how the way we are building our cities, those forests will turn into firewood instantly and break out into. And that's what happened a few months ago in Los Angeles. So that is what I was teaching. I was very honest with the kids. I said to them, listen, I'm not an expert or know anything, but we all have to now learn about this. We all have to, this is our reality. And so at the end of this book, the Green Book, I have included that chapter. And what I have done there, by the way, is I spoke to Jonathan Franzen and asked him for his recommendations, because he had written how shall I say, an acerbic little piece on nature writing. He's not taken in easily by very optimistic pronouncements, and complacency. So I enjoyed that.
It's interesting that you mentioned how you moved from teaching books about conflict and war, and that led to, teaching books of a different kind, because that sort of plays out in the Green Book, where in the chapter called "Many Words for Heat, Many Words for Hate," which describes your meetings with Ravish Kumar and a few other people. And there is this line by Ravish which sort of sets the tone for the chapter, where he says, when you forget the many words for heat in your language, you also forget that people from different religions used to live peacefully with each other. And then one day you will forget that, why have you forgotten?
That was a genius line. Namaskar, मैं रविश कुमार.
It's very identifiably a Ravish line also, right?
Yes, it is. What had happened was I had arrived in India in June. It was very hot. And I said to him, Ravish boss, agar Eskimos, I'll speak in Hindi, in English actually. I said to him, if Eskimos have 50 words in their language for snow, why don't we have more words for heat? गर्मी के लिए और शब्द क्यों नहीं है? तो he said, नमस्कार, मैं रविश कुमार, आज लेखक अमिताभ कुमार आए हुए हैं और उन्होंने कहा. And then, of course, people from all over who were watching his show sent all kinds of words, including, for example, from landlocked states, this dream of going to this idea of the sea. People started, instead of just supplying him words for heat, began telling him what a certain kind of a rain is called or what a kind of sea is called. But anyway, so that was good. But he turned it into this beautiful line, that it was basically about how language is in some ways, and how the richness of language and our adherence to language is the way in which we can save our memories and stay real. And if we forget, if we cede our control or our love, our awareness, our attentiveness towards language, we will cede also the large range of our affects, why we were doing something. And I thought it was a genius line. I've never gotten over it.
Right. Well, the reason I found the line very interesting is that it presents a sort of straight line between, as you said, how the way language evolves and phrases like political climate, right? Because
yes, very good. Yes. Okay, go ahead. I interrupted you, but yes, I have to note that. Very nice.
Because when we use words like political climate, etc., we are typically describing things which are, for lack of a better word, very niche developments in like national or local politics, right? So we're trying to say the political climate is turbulent, etc. But the fact that we use the language of weather to describe that should actually tell us something about the nature of the enterprise.
Yes, I like it. I mean, what these metaphorical shifts allow us to do is link different experiences or different realities, so that if climate on one hand is something that surrounds you, it is the weather, it is the air you breathe, it's the water you drink, then to make that little shift metaphorically to politics allows us to think about, what is it? What is the general understanding that surrounds us, So it allows us to, in some ways, how shall I say, measure the temperature in our cities, in the parliament, in the newspapers. And from what I hear, the news is not good. The political climate is not good in the place where I'm sitting, or for that matter, in the place that you are sitting.
Right, so that provides us an excellent segue into one of your older books, Time Outside of This Time, where you talk about fake news a lot. And it presents portraits of fake news from India and America, and it gives us certain parallels into the way these movements evolve and misinformation, whatever you call it, WhatsApp, university, etc. Um, how have you observed these things changing since you wrote that novel and in the years that have passed since?
Yeah. So, for anyone who might be listening, one thing I did during Trump 1.0 was that when he came to power, uh, instead of noting down, as Ernest Hemingway had suggested writers should do, write the truest sentence. He wanted you to write one true sentence every day, at least. Instead
This
of
is something
noting,
you tell your writing students as well, right?
G,
You
G,
go
G,
for a walk and then you come back and you write
right?
the truest sentence you can.
Yes, yes. So instead of doing that, I decided that the best thing to do during the Trump presidency was note down one lie, one revealing lie uttered by the man in power or anyone else, because, and certainly by the time the pandemic arrived, since the WHO had said that there was an infodemic, there was a spread of falsehoods. And of course, from the country of my birth, more and more stories of lies or mistruths spread on WhatsApp, leading to lynchings and brutal killings. So I started noting down that, and that energy of writing down or being attentive to fake news led to my novel, A Time Outside This Time. Now, for Trump 2.0, I felt, oh, that novel and what it was saying. Small things. I mean, there's one chapter called The Velocity of Lies in that novel. And there is, among other things, there's mention of this psychologist, social psychologist at the University of Virginia called Bella de Paulo, who had done a study of Trump's lies and how his lies are so far exceed the national average of lies, etc. None of that has changed, of course. So I thought, oh, my novel is increasingly relevant. Except, I have to say, boss, I feel that just the sheer momentum of lies now and the wrecking ball that is Elon Musk makes, again, the novel, or makes not only just my novel, but all kinds of fiction fade into, appear a little bit weak. That old quote of Philip Roth's, how the creative writer finds reality always overwhelming their imagination, is really true. Because every day, it's a new disaster. Yesterday, I saw a cartoon where from New Yorker, where it showed a line of reporters at a White House news briefing, and the guy has raised his hand and he just says, "Can someone explain what the hell is happening? What the hell is happening? What the hell is happening?" So I feel that all around me. You can't go to a meeting, you can't go to a dinner, you can't go to a party without, I'm talking about my condition here, without everyone saying, "So what is happening?" Like today, for example, I have received notifications that we are supposed not to buy anything today. Show your power by making no purchases online or in the shops. Cool? Now, of course, I'll do it. I will not purchase anything. But even here, even on this question, there's lots of confusion. Who is this benefit? No one knows. Who came up with this idea? Why are we doing this? What will happen? And will it benefit everyone or not? We don't know. I don't know. In other words, there is no understanding. I'm trying to say to you, yes, I wrote that novel, and I thought by listing lies, by trying to point out to people how you have to be attentive, by trying to make my reader work through the issue of what is the place of fiction in a time of fake news, bad fiction. What is the place of fiction? Should we speak only the truth? Should we do only verifiable facts? Should we imagine anything? That if I raise these questions, the reader would be on a reflective journey. We would be asked to introspect. I thought I was doing something important. And I'm still convinced it is important, but I also must very quickly confess that the other part of the scenario is utter chaos. No one understands here anything at the moment. What is happening? You call your congressman. We have been asked every day to call your congressman.
I think a part of the point of the lies is to exhaust people, right?
Oh,
To
very
keep the
good, very
lies
good.
coming so thick and fast that,
Yes,
beyond a
yes.
point, no one cares.
Sahi baat hai. Because yes, yes, it is to
In,
create
in that sort of scenario, documentation probably becomes important in its own right. In a way.
kya baat hai. Aditya, you are wise beyond. But that is true. That is true. How to take note, how to just, if there is chaos, which by the way also applies to our own scenario, which I was recording at that time. If there was a lynching every week or more, and you forgot कि भैया last week was it Pehlu Khan or was it Muhammad Ansari who was lynched by your compatriots? Well, if you were to document it, you would know who it was and what the names were. You know, in that way, boss, I really like. I'm sure I have got the book somewhere right here. Yeah. In that way, I really like, this Claudia Rankin book, Citizen, which is really about white violence on black people. And I've always tried to link it in my own mind with what Indians do, Hindus do to Muslims. On one page, her 3-line poem is because white men can't police their imagination, black men are dying. And on the opposite page, it just says in a whole list, in memory of, in memory of, in memory of. And on my edition, it says, in memory of Jordan Russell Davis, in memory of Eric Garner, in memory of John Crawford, in memory of Michael Brown. Okay? I had Claudia sign it here, but because I like that page so much. When I bought this book for my daughter, the list was longer. It had grown. And then, so the book becomes a historical document. And what you are suggesting is also important. Then what you're saying is, in terms of if the just the velocity of lies spreads a certain kind of chaos which paralyzes people, then it is important just at least to be able to document so that you can provide a living archive. I think that's a great
Right.
idea.
I think just to unite these two strands of this book, climate change and the stuff we just spoke about during the last couple of questions, there's a feeling, especially among people who work in climate change and sustainability and allied fields, that they have to look beyond America now in the Trump 2.0 when they're from strictly from a policy framing POV, they have to sort of assume a kind of post-America world. So I just wanted to ask you a little bit about this America-specific aspect of writing about climate change, etc., and especially because this is also a country where, as we have already mentioned, there is a strong tradition of nature writing.
Huh. Do you mean how to look for writing or activism in other
It's
parts of
like,
the world?
or consider the question that Mr. Franzen said, like, he's skeptical of a certain brand of nature writing right now.
Yeah.
So I suppose then the logical question is where does this sort of subgenre of writing go from here in Trump 2.0? Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know whether you follow P. Sainath's Pari network, but in those newsletters from reports from rural India, I sometimes look exactly for what people are doing. People who are often considered passive or disenfranchised, what are they doing in effective ways to, to build resources that will protect them from climate change? So, for example, just reading about how villagers constructed a dam for me is like, oh, that's great. There's a guy I spoke to, and I've written about him in one of my pieces in Granta. He, in Rajasthan, he has been recognized for what is called greening the desert. Um, his radical concept is that every family must have a green family member, by which he means every family has to plant a tree and you take care of the tree. That is your family member. And I think, so just that idea. And he also told me on the phone, which I have to test out by going and seeing him, is that he has been able to plant berries without using a single drop of water and making them grow. Now, how does that
That's remarkable.
happen? Uh, Sundar Gyani or Jani is his name. Um, so I have to, so what I'm saying is, by something like Pari Network, just or this guy, there are quite a few. Just from them, I try to see how marginal groups in India are able to imaginatively create resources uh, to contest climate change. I'd like to know from other countries too. One of the works that has been done, I mean, that which I actually taught from, is a book called "Not Too Late" and "Reasons for Hope." Both are of these are one is written by Rebecca Solnit, the other one is edited by her, and in that too there are reports from different parts of the world um, about, for example, how to stop a, a mine from going from work on a mine which would destroy the environment there from going forward, activism examples. So I'm trying to learn about that, and I thought that was I'm looking at that book right now, Not Too Late. That was good. That's what I can offer right now. uh, I'm just trying to read, field notes from a catastrophe. When you're stuck in traffic in a place like Delhi, for example, and you see so many cars, on the road to Gurgaon, early morning rush, and you think of the fuel being used, and if you think of the absence of comfortable, regular, cheap public transport that would render all of this travel by cars both unnecessary and expensive, then that's something I think at the level of policy, couldn't that be also done? And what would it take? I don't know. The heat will become unbearable in just a week or two, or a bit more maybe. You know,
I mean, long time Delhi people would argue that it's already unbearable.
Baap re
But
baap. Yes, yes,
I'm mindful of the fact that we are doing this for a Bangalore bookstore, so I'll try to frame my next question in a Bangalore centric way and steer this away from Delhi.
yes, yes, yes.
Which is, Professor Amitava Kumar is at Cullman Park, and he's with 10, 15 students, and he has Cullman Park to himself the day. What are you telling the students to do? How are you telling them to spend their day?
Wow. Well, it's a beautiful park. We might want to stop an old person, man or woman, walking past and ask them, "Is it true that Bangalore used to have such fine weather once that every afternoon there would be light rain and the temperature would always be temperate and there wasn't so much traffic, etc." That should not take more than 5 minutes, though. After that, we should just walk. And as we walk, we should make stops and draw something. Because when we draw, we become better observers. And you draw a tree, and maybe someone would know about that tree. I would like students to pool together the information about the species that we are seeing. What are the names of our trees? I have in one of my books written, if you can't name the names of your trees, the trees in your city, you cannot be a writer.
I mean, it's particularly fitting since Champaka is named after a biological name.
क्या बात है उफ यार ऐसे वाह wonderful wonderful observation क्या बात है ऐसे ही बात है yes 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 I maybe we would because everything is available on the internet, we could choose to read either about a walk, while sitting in the park, we would do a little reading, either about a walk or about a tree. Um, one thing I have benefited from teaching in this nature writing class was that it was just a short 2-page text by a woman called Sandra Steingraber on the humble house sparrow. But she made it so much about how is it found in Egypt? What is the story about it here? Where does it live? What is its sex life? Um, and then at the end, a personal turn and talking about breast cancer. Um, I'd like us, before we ended the class, after we had drawn, after we had discussed a tree or a poem about a tree, I would want to use this brief reading as a model to talk something about nature and then turn it into a memoir towards the end to connect our lives with the lives that we're observing around. But all the while, being mobile, taking short walks. I went for a walking reading club on the Heath in London. You were supposed to have read the book, and everyone had, and then she would have an idea, and then she would stop at one place, the person who was leading us, and she would offer a question. Some people would respond, and then we would walk again, and we could discuss it while we were walking. And then when she would stop, she would read another section or talk about another section, and it lasted a couple of hours, and it was a very pleasant time. I have taken my own students here for a walk in the Vassar farm and discussed things. And I think it would be a special delight to do it in Bangalore.
Right. So I think the ball is in Chapaka Bookstore's court.
Yes, next time.
Negotiate with the requisite bureaucrats and make this happen very soon.
Very good.
I was very interested in what you said about when we draw, we become better observers. And this is very this is something that John Birch has also written about. And it strikes me as a especially significant example of what you're trying to do with these three books as a whole, right? Because these books as physical artifacts are also, they're different from how a regular paperback would look and feel, etc. And I think sometimes people lose sight of the fact that a book is also a physical artifact, and it has to be designed like an object of art.
Say,
so if you could talk a little bit about the designing aspect and how you sort of decided upon a look and feel for these books. And there is a consistent series sort of style in these books, right?
Yeah.
The way they're designed, the way the layout happens with the drawings and the text, etc.
Yes, I think I have to, in many ways, credit, Gavin Morris, who is the designer of the book. He is a British designer who lives in Delhi, and Udayan Mitra and Himali Sodhi, my agent, had selected him, and then I met him. And then, even though he's not allowed to, because he's taken another job, not allowed to work elsewhere, I did beg him and offer him many martinis so that he could continue to work on Yellow Book, and then
a time-honored way.
That's right. And the Green Book. I was very, how shall I say, both surprised and pleased when after the Yellow Book came out, and it was in Bangalore actually, now that we mentioned that, it was at the Bangalore Literature Festival. This must have been November or December 2023, when my editor and agent, we were talking in the morning over breakfast at the festival. And Udayan Mitra from HarperCollins said, for the Green Book, we would maybe you should do 100 drawings. Now, that was much more than before. If you can see, Green Book is much thicker than these other two.
Right.
And I thought, whoa, okay. I was on a fellowship at that time at the Cullman Center, and I thought, all right, I'll have to get to work. And I started making more pictures. And he said the number of words also that he said was a little bit higher. And I just started thinking in terms of, okay, the different chapters. I had already done this trip down the Ganga and I had got the postcards from there. But a general sense, what can I say? Two things I have to say is just the encouragement for any person out there who's a writer, just the encouragement from an editor who says this is what you have to do and what you are doing is good. It's just such a shot in the arm. It's like, okay, I just felt like revived. I had no doubts about that after he had said what he had said, after Udayan had said. And Himali has always supported me. It was actually her original idea that this should come out as a book. And then I've thought of it as a gift from her, because she had first just said, can I use your, because as I started posting these paintings on the internet, she said, can I use it for my agency? And I said, of course, what is mine is yours. And then after a while she said, actually, I have a feeling this would be a good book. So what I'm saying is, it's a collaboration, boss. An editor believes in you, the designer comes in with ideas, the agent says this is great, and then they...
Yeah, absolutely. I think because one of the reasons why people have misconception about books is that publishing industry is very opaque. But one of the common misconceptions is that writing a book is a completely solo effort, when it is the opposite of that. There are so many people involved in it.
Exactly. And I must say that even after Gavin would have submitted his design, these people then go carefully through it and suggest changes and come back. And I've been quite pleased with it. What can I say? There are some that I like very. I mean, this was an accidental. I had woken up early in the trip during the Ganges, and and in the morning in a place called Dev Prayag, I just made it, and I thought,
I also enjoy the one which you draw of Darbhanga Ghat.
Oh, good. And what about Premchand's portrait, which was lacking a mouth because the moisture had got at it? Darbhanga, yes. सही. और बताइए.
Since you just spoke about drawing these works, I want you to backpedal a little bit and tell us about how you started drawing. You mentioned in the book that you used to draw trees in Champaran, and that was, one of the first occasions that you did this, and then you returned to it many years afterwards. So if you tell us about how that happened.
Yes. What would happen is that you would take your final exam in December, and the geometry set that you had and that you had to use was now forever useless. It was great. And then we had to go to our village, and again in the summer, so to Champaran. Now, to go into the village, as a preparation for the village, I would buy, I think the company then was called Camlin or something. I would buy a simple watercolor set. Now, that watercolor set, of course, no one was there to teach me or to tell me that ordinary paper will not take water, etc. It just, how should I say, it just disappointed and frustrated me that I was never able to draw or accurately, in some ways, portray what I saw on the Ganges as the ferry took us to the other side, or when I ended up in the fields and I would see this row of sisham or the mustard fields and want to draw it, and nothing. There was nothing there. I'm talking about when I was 10 or 11 or 12, 13, 14. Now, that was the same kind of set, my child's simple watercolor, that I would imagine, how many years ago now? 6 years ago, just before the pandemic, I had used to draw this. Because one day, crows appeared just outside this window, and there are no crows here. And I thought I should draw it. And I just quickly drew it. And then the pandemic arrived, and a woman was on Instagram trying to teach a class for kids. So I had my son would have been 9 or 10 at that time. I asked him to come and sit here on my desk, and we watched it on the computer. And I told them that they could draw every day or something. Yeah. because I do this with my students, I had said to my two children, you should write a paragraph every day. Now they stopped doing the drawing after a few days, but I did not give up. I just kept doing it, you know, and just that meant that I could then ask people about how to do it, what materials. And a woman who is married to a colleague of mine told me how I could use. She told me about the products that I could spread on a newspaper, for example, to seal it as a sealant and then use paint on it. So over 2 years maybe, I moved from watercolor to a different form of the watercolor, which was thicker, consistent. And then from there, in more recent years, I've moved to, for the last one, Rain Book, I have oil. I also do a little bit of digital work. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's actually what I was going to move on to, which is, if you could talk a little bit about how your relationship with painting has been impacted by the iPad, because I mean, while I don't use an iPad myself, I know how it has a sometimes profound effect on the styles of artists who have been working even for decades.
Yeah. The best example is David Hockney. David Hockney is wonderful with oil and all that, but he is, utterly open. He's not a purist. He's, I saw his iPad paintings in a museum in New York where they had blown up. They had erected big screens which resembled the iPad, and his iPad drawings were portrayed on these. And I thought, Yarito, that is great. Or, there's also a glow in those. When you look at the iPad or at your phone, it does glow. I mean, literally, it glows. So I just thought, why not do it? So this is a more recent thing. So this was after the Blue Book came out. Okay,
Right.
I thought I should expand, and it was easy. For example, all of us know, you have heard or read about Dover Beach. So I took my students, and you don't have to take paint. You just take your iPad, and I could draw with the white chalk cliffs of Dover. Huh? Uh, it appealed to me because it was easy to transport, and yeah, we got a message about 5-7 minutes, all good. And so it was easy for me to just be able to draw or to paint, and I like the feel. For example, I saw a picture of Berger being interviewed by someone, and I could just, from an archival photo by John Moore, John Berger interviewing a subject for his book, A Fortunate Man. It has given me a certain kind of freedom, and I like it. I don't like the look as much as I do when I'm using oil. I just arbitrarily, no one told me to, but I used canvas, and then I started painting on wood panels. And the cover of Green Book, for example, boss, is oil on a wood panel. The painting actually is much bigger than what Gavin has put here, and it is the only one, because my wife liked it so much. It is the only one that I have put on my wall downstairs. And I'm quite proud of it. What I'm saying to you is, my relationship with the materials has just become more complex. I've learned things which I did not know, and in fact, in one of my early books, which you might have read, Aditya, because you have been very good to me, Bombay, London, New York, I mentioned there was a teacher
Right.
in my school. His name was UN Singh. He saw, once again, the art. He was the art teacher. He saw my bad painting of mountains and trees once again, and he said, हम कोशिश किए तुमको third prize देने का. he he expressed his desire and disappointment that he wanted to give me the third prize, but just wasn't good enough. So I always remember that. And I wish Mr. Yuan Singh was alive and we saw each other, so that I could at least tell him that I have learned more. I've learned more about materials. I've learned more about other things, and I'm able to do something that is pleasing.
Right. So that strikes me as an excellent note to wrap up our conversation on. Thank you so much for joining us today, Amitava.
Thank you,
It's
boss. You are always so
always a delight.
attentive. You don't even need to draw because you are so attentive. You pay attention to everything.
But maybe I will draw after today's conversation.
Excellent. Thank you so much, and thank you to Champaka for giving us this opportunity also. Thanks.
Absolutely.
All right.
Hi, thank you so much for that wonderful and quite insightful conversation. That was that was a very nice evening, well spent. The green book, along with the blue book and the yellow book, are available at Champaka store for our viewers. So you can either drop by at the store or order it online on our website. Thank you so much and have a good day.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Bye bye.